conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone. As I mentioned in the class, I will be uh, attending a conference this week in Maryland to present some of my work. That's why we won't have any in-person class. But I wanted to put some videos so that you can just watch them, the things that I was going to do in the class this week, and you can watch them on the videos. So I was going to solve the exam questions, and we will have a guest lecturer, Daron. So his video is going to be online, and so for this week you can just watch those two videos, and when I come back we're going to start talking about the next chapter. Okay, so I hope you had a nice exam. So it will take, I think by Friday I would have the results. And if you're attending the class, I'm sure that some of the questions were very familiar, and I even mentioned them in the class. But if you didn't, then it will be a whole new exam for you. And so let's go through the questions. And some of them was pretty easy, and then some of them were challenging, I know. And that's going to help me to do some ranking in the class. So the first question was about the definition of the macroeconomics. And we know that macroeconomics, we are looking at individual behaviors and the firm's behavior when they're maximizing profit, individual behaviors when they're maximizing utility. So the correct answer would be B for that one. So it's one of the easy ones in the exam, because the other ones are all related with the macroeconomics or economic history. So the next question was the sentences that I actually mentioned in the class. We know that every sunk cost is a fixed cost, but not every fixed cost is a sunk cost, because if you think that you have a fixed cost, let's say an annual rent payment, you can always sublease to someone else and you can get some of the money back. But sunk is actually the money that was gone, and there is no way that you can just bring it back, and it is just fixed costs. So this is a true statement, and the opposite would be false. Not every fixed cost is a sunk cost, and that's but not every sunk cost can be like a variable cost. So that's not true. And every sunk cost is a fixed cost, but not every fixed cost is a sunk cost. And the third one was related with the corner solution of the indifference curves. Again, I draw this line in the class. And so this is, and I gave you the exact example. So this could be like a right shoe versus left shoe. You can only have a corner solution, because it doesn't matter to have 20 right shoes if you have only one right shoe. And so that it should be a kind of matched point. And we also talk at the production side, but that's a different story. So this doesn't violate any of the assumptions. It is just not in the shape that we usually see, because indifference curves, if you remember, it is this curve. But there are corner solutions also can happen in the economy. So the first one is wrong because it doesn't violate any of the assumptions. These curves doesn't intersect with each one of them. And so when you actually move from left to right, you're just increasing the more is better assumption is also satisfied. And the two is an example that I give, and it's a perfect example. And the only way to reach the indifference curve of IC3 is through the increasing income. So this is a little bit tricky, because when income goes up, this curve shifts, right? Because these are like income divided by PY. This is income divided by PX. So how much money we paid? What is our income? If we paid all of them on the good Y, this would be our point. If we spend all of the money on X, this will be our point. So yes, when the income goes up, this is going to shift right, but it's not the only way. There are other ways. So if both prices for good X and good Y reduces at the same time, this would also shift it, right? Suddenly you have the same income and the shoe prices went down significantly. Then you can actually buy 2 pairs of shoes, 3 pairs of shoes. So that could be wrong. And this is a maximizing utility point because that's a tangent. And if it was curl, it was like that, if you remember. So whenever the optimum bundle of production of those goods are when this line actually touches the curve. So that's correct. And 5 is also true because there are some cases when one of those product prices just goes down. You're not buying more because if the other one stays the same, then you could be actually wait for the other one to become cheaper. So there's going to be some ranges and where the price is just going to go up, go down, but you won't buy it, you know. And or basically the law of demand says when price goes down, the quantity would go up, but until just that prices touches somewhere that you would have so that you can buy the both products together. That's the time that transaction is going to happen, and so that's also true. So it's 2, 4, and 5, right? And next one is this is the one that I actually liked. I saw this on Twitter, and I said I can make a question out of it. And this is the sentences. It is posted on the internet and Instagram. The autumn is art, the others are seasons. That's a nice sentences. But when the Cemal Süreyya's name is not attached to it, they only take 700,000 likes. 700 likes. But if the Cemal Süreyya, the famous poet's name is attached to it, it takes more, right? So let's look at the statements. Basically, as a consumer, you like this, you're buying it by just liking it. So it's like that's your purchasing decision. And there's a producer who actually posted on the Instagram. And so we need to make a kind of decisions about all of those items according to this, the likes. So the price of the consumer pay decreases. The price doesn't change because you just posted that thing. So basically, and whether you like it or not, it's just same cost to you. Basically, it's just there's no changes over there. You're not paying anything, and so this could be wrong. So producer surplus increases. Well, imagine that you're posting that thing, and when you add the Cemal Süreyya's, you're selling it more, and it doesn't cost you that much, right? And so basically, you are selling more of a people without raising your cost. So in your value stick, basically, the producer surplus is just going to go up because you will sell more of those people. So that's true. And consumers' willingness to pay increases because that you are liking it more when you see someone's actually famous names attached to it. And it is the same idea when you actually go there and let's say bid on an art piece, but you don't know how much does it cost, and you have some money in your mind that you're going into the auction. But if you see a certificate that it says, well, the art dealers think that this is gonna the market value for that piece is between, let's say, $700 to $1,000. So if you're going there with the willingness to pay 500, well, you read this statement and the certificate, you could actually, adjust that willingness to pay. And we see this many times. And it was written on the model that why there are some certificates presented in the auctions because it would increase the willingness to pay. So that's true. And of course, the consumer surplus is going to increase, right? Price doesn't change, but your willingness to pay, this is your willingness to pay, and this is the price. The price doesn't change, but your willingness to pay is increasing, so the consumer surplus is just going to go up. And producers' willingness to sell decreases, and it doesn't have anything to do with the willingness to sell. And basically, who is providing this sentence to that person, basically, right? And there is no information about here about the willingness to sell. Even if you think it's Cemal Süreya, just he's not alive, so he can't remember the authorships. They sell their books to the random housing. That's what we talked in the class, and their willingness to sell will changing depending on how the random housing approaches them. But here there is no situation like so that would be false. And the last one is the example illustrates the conclusion of positive economics may contrast with those in normative economics. And this is like selling the kidneys on eBay. If you remember that example in the class. So you have a sentences, and then you don't know if it belongs to Cemal Süreya or not. But you're adding their name, and as a producer, you're selling it more. Suddenly, rather than 700, you have 2,300 likes. So it is good for you. As a consumer, you like it more when you see somebody else's name on it that you know, right? So the consumer surplus increases. So in an economic sense, there is a positive side at both sides. Producers are happy, consumers happy, but it is unethical because you're putting someone's name there, which you're not sure of, and you're creating some economic activity which is beneficial to both parties, but it is not ethical. So that's where the normative economics comes, right? So it could be a fraud, but both parties could benefit from that. So you can just exactly see that link between this and then selling your body parts on eBay. And there's an economic benefit for both parts, but it could be unethical. So this one is also true. So this is going to be like that. 2, 3, 4, and 6. That's the correct answer. Okay, again, this one, the example was given in the class. Basically, Taylor Swift is telling them that, look, your product, Spotify and Apple, is a substitute to my concert. Right? And basically, when people are listening from my music from Spotify and Apple, they're not coming to my concert. So they're like substitute products. And Apple and Spotify is telling them, this is a real event, by the way, and it actually happened. Say, listen, we are complementing each other. So these services and your consoles are a complementary product because when people listen your music in Spotify and Apple, they want to come to your concert. So basically, there's a complementary relationship. It's not substitute. It's not one way or another. It is basically the more they listen music in Spotify and Apple, the more likely that they will come to your concert. And the question here can actually tell you that why this is false in several ways. One is in a cross-price elasticity, I mentioned in the class, the cutoff is zeros, right? If it is less than 0 and greater than 0. And if these two products, as Spotify and Apple claim, are complementing to each other, it should be less than 0 because this is when there is a complement. And if they were substitute, as Taylor Swift claimed, it would be a positive. So this is greater than 0. But in any case, it is wrong because the number is wrong here, and also it should be negative. So this is if Spotify and Apple Music supports the claim, the claiming to support those Spotify, Apple Musics, that should be a complement, and it's less than 0. Okay, so 6. So this is a question that wasn't, you know, the easy side, and but we did similar examples in the class. So one thing that I mentioned in the class that we had a capital, it was 2, 2, 2, 2, etc. Remember? And we said that it was a short run. And because one of the capitals is fixed, the capital is fixed and label is just changing. Here, as you can see, that both capital and label is changing. So it's a long run. In the long run, we know the fixed costs are 0. So this is the first thing that you need to know. And you can get this from this capital and labor, they're both changing. If both factors of productions are changing, that means you're in the long run. So this is 110 right there. Okay. And from this isoquant and isocost. So this was isoquant and this was isocost. This intersection happens when you have this marginal productivity of labor divided by marginal productivity of capital, W over R. So basically, the salary that you pay to your workers and marginal productivity of labor should match. And the rent that you pay for your capital and the marginal productivity that you will get from that capital should match. So this is 4 over 8, right? And basically, this will tell you that 8W is equal to 4R, 2W is equal to R. So you got that. Now, I want to know this one. And what is this? It is the rent times capital plus wage times labor is equal to my total cost. Well, I know this is 4. Right? And I know this is 7. So 4R plus 7 is what I'm looking for. Okay? So if I know somehow what the R is, I will know what W is, and then I would actually solve that, right? So let's look at this line now. So this line is telling me 3R, 3 times R, plus 5 times L, 5 times W, is equal to 110. Right? And this is telling me each R is 2H. So you have 2H here. So this is 6 plus 5, 11, is equal to 110. So W is going to be 10. So if this is 10, R is 20. And that's what I was looking for, right? 4 times 20 is 80 plus 70, which is going to be 150. And okay. So it requires a couple of solution, but again, it's just basically division and addition. That's it. And I always put a couple of questions like that to understand how many of you can actually solve these. Okay, 7 is an easy one because we talked that weeklies. What is the good thing about the weekly? Everybody would tell their willingness to pay. So if you're going to say weekly and if you said, okay, the winner is going to pay the second highest, there is nothing to be afraid of for this 800 to reveal it. So the first option would be everybody would write on the paper 40, 160, and 800. And let's say this is the first individual, second individual, third individual. And he would win, and he would get the 160. He would pay the 160. But in the second time, then now you know, because these sellers have the same willingness to pay, someone is going to pay 800. Since you have that information, probably you would price it for 799 and you will sell it. So when you add them up, you would get the highest thing. So it will be weekly and fixed. Okay. And the idea is that from the second one, you would actually know the willingness to pay of each individuals. So you wouldn't actually put a price like 200, 400, because you have that somewhere over there, and because who's willingness to pay 800. That wouldn't be the case if it was outcry, right? Outcry is like everybody is bidding with the, let's say, $10 increments. That if there's an auction like that, this would end at 160, and you would never know what the third bidder's willingness to pay, as we mentioned in the class. So the weekly and the fixed would give you the highest one. Okay, and this is the another one that's kind of at the hard side. And it is related to conjoint analysis. And it's pretty good, numbers. And it's kind of from the real world example, right? But you need to do some kind of additional calculation here, which is again, like a simple table, because we need to rank these products. So you have Pro Max, you have battery, and this has a better camera, and this one is a better battery, and the third one is the Samsung, right? Competitor. And you have these three segments, A, B, C, and they are like 40% market here, 25% here, and 35% here. Now, all you need to do actually, just to decide on what is their utilities for each product, because you need to put them in the product basis. So for segment A, you can see that the product is 6.7 screen, 5 periscope, and the price is 82. So 20, 45, 55, right? And for segment B, which is 10, 22, 30. And for segment C, 20, 29. So these are the utilities for that product when you look at the different features. For battery max, which is 6.1 and 36 gigahertz, and the price is 69.19. This one is 16. So you have, right, 6 okay, 6, what is that number? 6, 14, which is 20, and 16, 46. So let me erase this because I can't read it. It's not erasing it. So for battery, for segment A, you need the 6.1, which is 6 plus 36 megahertz, which is 14, plus you have 69.99. That's a 16. So that's 40, 46. I'm sorry. 36. And for segment B, you have 3 plus 8, 11 plus 21. For segment C, you have 4, 12, which is 16, plus 16, 32. And for segment C, for Samsung, for segment A, you have 6.3, which is 14, plus 16, which is 30, and 42. And the other one is for Samsung that you have 6.3, which is 8, plus 9, 17, plus 9, right, 26. And you have for the last one, 8 plus 8, 16, plus 11, 27. Okay, so once you have this table, the rest is just very easy, right? So if Apple launches the Pro Max against the competitor, so this one, which market segments they will get? They will get this 40 and because 55 is greater than 42, they will get the segment A. They will get the segment B because 30 is greater than 26, and they will get the segment C because 29 is greater than 26. So they will get 100%, but this is wrong. Right? If Apple launches Battery Max TR, this one, against the competitor, what would Apple's expected market share is strictly greater than 30, but strictly less than 50, let's say. So if it is only these two, what segment Apple is going to get? So Apple is going to get only C, right? Because 32 is greater than 27, but Samsung is going to win segment A and segment B. So that would be correct because they will get 35, which is greater than 30, but less than 50. Third, if Apple launches both of them, right, then the battery segment C, will strictly prefer the Battery Max TR. So for C, and if Apple launches both Pro Max and Battery Max, and then the battery focus segment C will strictly prefer Battery Max TR. For segment C. So we're going to compare the segment C. You can see that this 32 is going to be strictly preferred to that, right? So this is also correct. And nobody in the segment C is going to buy the Pro Max. They're going to buy the battery one from the Apple because 32 is greater than 29. So that's correct. So if Apple raises Pro Max TR's prices such that price worth for segment B falls 5 utility points, right? So basically, the Apple is trying to increase this price. Of course, when the price is increased, the price for this utility is going to be less because we will prefer it less. So it will go down by 5 units, right? And in segment B. So this segment B is going to not come up by 8, but they will have 3. So this will have 25 now rather than 30. It says that in segment B, the competitor becomes preferred Pro Max. So when it becomes 25, of course, everybody's going to go buy Samsung because now the price is too high for the segment B. So that's true. And 5 is if the competitor cuts its price so that its price part for in segment A rises by 4 utility points. So if this becomes 46, Pro Max TR is still preferred in segment A, right? So if Samsung is trying to reduce their price from 76,999 to, let's say, 60, so that they could have a higher utility, they would still lose the customers to the Pro Max because 46 is not high enough to cover 55. So that's also true. So that could be the answer. Okay, question 9 is the one that we did in the class. Basically, you have two shops, and then one of them is just flat is 6. So the Sultanahmet is just with the price is 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. Of course, when Ayşe buys it from Sultanahmet, she will buy only 4 lokum, right? And if I buy it from the Kadıköy, they say first unit for 8, 5, then the rest is 3, right? Since then 4 is greater than 3, they would buy 5. She would buy 5 units. So these are the marginal benefits for Ayşe, and the marginal cost because she's paying money, and these are the marginal benefits. So if she buys it from Kadıköy, she would buy all the way to 5 units because 4 is greater than 3, and the other one she would pay only 4 units. So 1 is true and 2 is true. If Ayşe's monthly consumer surplus is higher in the vendor B than vendor A. So when you look at the Kadıköy, what is the consumer surplus? So you would actually subtract that, right? So 12 minus 8 is 4, 5, 5, 3, 1. So it's basically 14, 14, 17, 18 here. And the other ones is 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just 24, right? So you would buy 6 here, you would buy 4 here, 2 here, and 0 here. So 10, 12. So 18 is greater than 12, so that's also true. Consumer surplus is higher. And the total amount Ayşe spends per month is higher at vendor B, at vendor A. So she would buy 4 units and pay $6, so that's $24 for vendor A. And the other one, she pays 5 units, but she pays 8, 5, 13 for the first 2 locums, and then the rest is let's say, so this is 8, 5, 13 is the first 2, and then you would have the rest 3 is 9, because each one of them is $3. So you'd have 22. So Ayşe's total amount spent on vendor B higher than at vendor A. That's not true, right? And she would spend more in vendor A. She spends 24, and in the vendor B, she would spend 22. So that would be 1, 2, and 3 only. Okay, next. So the sunflower oil, that's market shifts. Basically, you have a demand and you have a supply. And then first the demand goes up. So this is the equilibrium price. And then your supply goes up because fertilizers used in the sunflower framing rises sharply. And but also there is a production technology new, and it shifts back a little bit. So this is going to shift back a little bit. So first you go from A to B, but also because of the productivity changes, the supply shifts back a little bit, and you come to the C. So the question says there's going to be equilibrium price for rice for sure, but the quantity really determines is undetermined. So 10 is going to be C. '11. So there's a platform that says there's a new app, and there's a lot of people are just joining it, but it hits to the peak, and then people are just cannot find the right. So basically, you have a positive network effects. People are just coming in and joining, and you're just getting more and more customers. But when it is kind of hit to the peak, and then you go back and you just download the old app because you cannot find anybody who can write from the new app. Basically, it's just a congestion, right? So there's a congestion price kicks in. First network effect, then there's a negative network externality. So it will be A. So this is a network followed by the congestion. This is the sentences again I used in the class. And so basically investors are selling and buying at different stocks. So basically investors are thinking the ones that they sell is going to go down to price. The ones that they buy, it will go up, right? But at the end, it works opposites. Basically, the ones that you sold actually makes more money than the one that you bought. So this happens because you have something in your mind that you want to confirm, and also you overconfidence yourself. So it's 1 and 2. So this is the decision to how to open a firm or close a firm, and you know that it is related with the average variable cost. So if two rival firms to begin a price war by repeating cutting prices, and at the current price level, firm excess prices falls below the average cost but remains above the average variable cost. So what I'm saying is this is the average cost, and this is the average variable cost, and this is the price. We would still produce it, right? Because we are in there, and to cover part of it is fixed cost. In the long run, we wouldn't, but in the short run, we would, because the price is still above the average variable cost. It's just a definition. 14, in the smartphone market, the following events occur simultaneously. There's a technological innovation reduces the production of the smartphone manufacturers. So that's going to shift the supply to the right, because it's cheaper now. And the global social media trend makes high-end smartphones more desirable. So demand is going to shift to the right. So both demand and supply is going to shift to the right. And of course, the average market price is just going to rise because of that. So this is demand and supply. And so the production cost decreased, and the global social media trends are high-end, more desirable. So the demand is just going to increase, right? And because of the stronger demand, there will be a price increase. So there's no movement, and because both of these events actually shifted, and there's a leftward shift it's not a left foot, it's a right foot because the cost is rising. There's a movement along the both curves, rising the price. Again, these are the events that's coming from outside of the price and quantity, demand and supply. So that's going to create a shift. and this is also wrong. So the correct answer would be B. Okay, this one, I canceled that question because I made a typo. This was going to be 50. But let's solve how to do it. So basically you have a demand and supply and the equilibrium price and quantity when you make them equal, right? P is 20 and the Q is 60. And there is a price binding, which is at 15, a price ceiling. And what is that value? So it is a binding because it's ceiling, so you can't go to the equilibrium. A is wrong. But what is this value here? When price is equal to 15, when you put 15 here, 30, and 50, which is 50. When the Q is equal to 15, what is 50? What is the price here? Is 25. Because you put 50 here and you find a P25. So we know this area right there is dead weight, right? And how would they actually calculate that? So this difference is 25 minus 15 is 10. And this difference is 10. 10 times 10, 100 divided by 2 is going to be 50. So the price ceiling is going to be binding. That's true. It's a shortage, right? Because what's the shortage? You have 50 here. And what is the value here? When you put 15 onto demand curve, that would be 70. So there's a shortage. But dead weight loss is going to be equal to 50. But everybody got 4 points here because I pushed 4 rather than 5. But I can ask some similar questions in the final, so you better know how to calculate these things. Okay, so this is what happened in Turkey actually during the pandemic. Many physicians, they kind of delay their retirement because they want to help people. And so there was when the COVID ended, they retired. So the supply of the doctors reduced. Okay. So after the COVID, when the doctors, they retired, the supply of the doctors actually decreased. And also the demand for the doctors increased because a lot of people actually delay their medication, and also there's an aging population. And the demand for doctors increased. So this is your new equilibrium, right? So what happens in the equilibrium wage? Equilibrium wage increases because the labor supply decreased, doctor supply decreased, and also demand increased. Okay, so this is just price would go up. Okay, this one, 17. So I gave you the marginal cost. I didn't want to take any derivatives. I didn't want to take any derivatives or something. But basically, the market price is at 18. So you have, let's say, like that, marginal cost. And say average variable cost without putting the numbers. You know that the shapes are like similar like that. And when firm shuts down because price is less than average total cost, firm never shuts down, right? When the average total cost, the shutting down decision is related with average variable cost. So this could be wrong. And even if the profit is negative, you will still continue because that is because you have a fixed cost and you're in the short run. So a lot of things that just makes you think that, okay, this is going to be the decision where it needs to be done the average variable cost. When Q is equal to 2 and the price is equal to 18, right? So price is equal to 18. When Q is equal to 2, because marginal cost equal to price at Q is equal to 2, because Q is equal to 2, this is when you put Q here, 4 times 2 is 8, plus 10, 18. It covers the average variable cost, minimizing the losses compared to the shutdown. So since this is right here, and what is the average variable cost? When you look at the average variable cost is equal to 10 plus 2Q, right? You basically divide this with the Q. So when Q is equal to 2, your average variable cost is 14. So basically you are this price 18 is covering your average variable cost. So you will actually continue for production. So the answer would be B. And this one is about opportunity cost, right? And if you're studying, the biggest alternative that you can lose is work or relax. So when you compare that, of course, 18 is going to be the relaxing because it gives you more value. So that is the opportunity cost of working first hour is $18. But the third hour, the relaxing would give you a benefit of 8, but work would give you 15. So it would be work. So it would be 15. So 18 minus 15, it would be 3. That's differences in the opportunity cost. So 19, if the price experimentation, if a firm changes the price of a product and observes a change in the sales, it can always conclude the price change caused by the differences in demand. That is false. We talked about that. There is advertisement, there is branding, there's a bunch of price. Price is not the only decision that determines supply and demand. There are other things that actually affects the demand. And 20, for the hikers, you need to decide what is the optimum quantity. And you can see that you would actually do the first hour because your benefit is higher than the cost. You would do the second hour, your benefit is higher than the cost. You would do the third hour, your benefit is higher than the cost. But fourth hour, now you're actually, it's costing you more to do it. So you would actually stop it. Okay, the optimal choice would be 3. Okay, so this is again in the class we talked about the bed mounting, and I gave an example about the political rivals. Why people actually bed mount their rivals, because it was a zero-sum game. When you win something, you're going to win from the other party's candidate. It is the same thing here. So if you have only everybody, the consumer demand has reached limit, the only way to get that is to win a customer from the other guys. And in that strategy, so the bed mounting actually would work at that time, because the loss for the other one is the win for you. And okay, 22. So this is very wordy statement, but if you're reading the question, I'm asking, what's the difference between the average variable cost? And it is the same examples that we did for in the class with the oven, high rise versus butter flake. And you didn't have to calculate each piece of these stuff. And if you did, it just, you can still find the answer, but it would be a waste of time, because I'm asking, what is the average variable cost in the two firms, and these are showing the average fixed cost and average variable cost. You need to kind of separate them, right? So you know that the ingredients is 20% higher, 5% higher, I'm sorry, 5% higher. So this would be 0.63. And this is a labor is a variable cost. Plant overhead, I'm telling it's a fixed cost. And transportation is a variable cost, but I gave you the example that here is 60% is fixed and 10% is variable. So the variable piece is going to be here 10%, 0.10, 10 cents, I'm sorry. And you will have a fixed cost, which you could calculate, but you don't have to, which would be different because you have 20% higher output. Advertising is a fixed cost. So when you look at the variable cost, actually, the only differences comes from the ingredients. And that's 5% higher. So 60%, so 0.60 in one of them, the other one is 0.63. So the difference would be 3 cents. Or the average variable cost, if you want to calculate all of them, for the first group, cold brew, 0.60 plus 0.18 plus transportation piece 0.10. For peak leaf, it will be 0.63 plus 0.18 plus 0.10. Therefore, the difference is only actually 3 cents. These variable cost changes with the unit of production, and all of these 20% higher, 20% higher output, or 25% higher in the advertisement, they're going to affect the fixed cost, and I'm not asking that here. That would be a more complicated question. Okay, this thing happened actually when I was watching your news a couple of days ago, and it happened in Istanbul that somebody was actually charging 45 Turkish liras for phone charging fee, and the bill was around 10,000 Turkish liras. But even for that bill, they add this 45 Turkish liras as a phone charging. So what happens? So you are basically negative reactions on social media. So demand for that coffee's place went down. So if nothing happened, you would have a lower demand, and the price would actually go down because nobody is going to that cafe right now. And but which of the following independent events would most likely to move coffee price back towards its original equilibrium? So it was here, right? It was P before. Now it is here. It is in the P after. So I'm asking, what kind of events actually moves this price all the way up? So if nearby substitute coffee raises price, of course, the people are just going to come here. It says substitute products, prices goes up. So the demand is just going to shift. So the price is just going to go up. And the price of a complementary good falls, of course, demand would go up, right? Because if it becomes pastry becoming cheaper, then you would buy, pastries and you would demand more coffee. And if the cold weather increases consumer preferences, demand would shift. And the local income rises, that's demand for shifts, right? And if the global coffee bean prices increases, raising the input cost for coffee, then the supply would shift. But again, I'm asking about what would happen to the price. So it would actually bring the price up too, right? And all of them is the answer, E. 24, the indirect approach is something that you don't ask customers, you actually derive it. So analyzing the consumption data to infer adoption patterns would be indirect approach. The other ones are direct. You're doing an interview, you're doing a survey, auction, right? Focus groups. These are all keywords for you. Okay, these are going to be direct. but the next one is the indirect. Okay. And the last question is about again, economic cost versus accounting cost, right? So you are making $400,000 accounting profit, but if you didn't invest there, you could have 80,000 interest, and since you're working in this job, you're losing a salary that you could have gained by working other places. So this is your loss, basically 230,000. So 400,000 is an accounting profit, but these are the opportunities that are lost. So you need to subtract to get the economic profit, which is 180,000, 400 minus 230. Okay. So let me. Okay. So I hope this made it clear. And yeah, I think I will have the results by next Friday. I will send an email with the grades and averages, etc. But if you have more questions, just feel free to come after the class the week after when you see me, and we can just go over the questions, particular questions again. And have a great week, and I'm going to see you when I get back.